Fans, welcome to another episode of the big Group 1 racing show for the racing season of 2016/17. This is episode 21, and in this episode I'll be previewing 5 Group 1 races. Yes, 5 Group 1 races. It's all part of Golden Slipper Day at Rosehill Gardens this Saturday, and as per usual, when I preview more than 2 or 3 Group 1s, I do tend to split the episode into 2 parts. It's exactly what's going to happen in episode 21. So this is part 1 of episode 21. I'll preview the first 3 Group 1s that are coming up on Golden Slipper Day this Saturday. They are the Ranvert Stakes, the George Ryder, and the Rosehill Guineas. So let's not muck around. Big episode to get through. Let's get straight into it. So the first Group 1 of the day at Rosehill Gardens on Saturday is the Ranvert Stakes over the 2,000 metre distance. It is race 4 on the program, and the horses will jump from the barrier at 2:05 p.m. Of course, you can watch all the action from Golden Slipper Day on 7 and also Sky Racing 1. Let's have a look at the field and the odds. We start with Hartnell, who is short price favourite at $2.05, which is quite surprising considering its run last start. The United States is the next best at $6.50. At $9.50 we have Stratum Star. At $10 we have Antonio Casepi. At $15 Our Ivanhoe. At $16 is He's Our Rocky, and then at $26 we have Preferment and Sophia Rose. So time to get into the field in depth. Number 1 we have Hartnell, of course a John O'Shea trained horse. William Book takes the ride from Adela in this race. Barrier 6 is its barrier. And, well, it came third last in the Group 1 Chipping Norton last start, which was a bit odd. I had it clearly finishing second. You might remember in my Group 1 Chipping Norton preview, I actually thought that it would smash the rest of the field, with Winks, of course, smashing the whole field, but it wasn't to be. In fact, it's probably a forgive run, to be honest, bearing in mind the barrier. Of course, it had a relatively wide barrier on the outside, coming out of barrier 10 in that race. Of course, it's coming out of barrier 6 in this race. It goes up to suited distance. Of course, it won the Turnbull over this distance, where it basically smashed the whole field that day at Flemington. So it goes up to suited distance. There's no question about that. Has won the Group 1 BMW as well over the 2,000 metre distance. So it's not just the Turnbull, it's also won the BMW. So that's 2 Group 1s that has won over that 2,000 metre distance. I think it's still the one to beat, even though it came second last start. I think we can forgive that run and say that this horse is clearly the one to beat in this field. Number 2 is Preferment, a Chris Waller trained horse. Huey Bowman comes on for the ride, and it's coming out of barrier 4. It's a 4-time Group 1 winning horse. That includes the Victoria Derby and the Australian Cup, 2 races that I actually saw this horse win in real life, not on the TV. So very proud of that. But its last win was nearly a year ago. In fact, it was in the BMW at Group 1 level during last year's Sydney Carnival. So it won during the Sydney Carnival last year. Could it win during this year's Sydney Carnival? I'm not too sure. It's been out of form lately, to be honest. In fact, it came last in the Chipping Norton, where a lot of these runners have come from into this race. So and of course 6 in the Apollo as well this prep. So look, I am going to pass on Preferment, although I have seen it win some pretty good races, including the 2,000 metre Australian Cup last year. So, look, it's been out of form, and that's where I'm going to pass on Preferment, unfortunately. Number 3 is Stratum Star, a Darren Weir trained horse, and Damien Lane comes on board for this race. It's coming out of Barrier 1. And it came fourth in the Australian Cup last weekend over the 2,000 metre distance. It's in the form of its life. It's fair to say that, winning 3 of its last 4. And that does include the Group 1 Kingston Town Classic, which was last year. Of course, that was last prep, but still, it's a pretty good effort from this horse. I think it should be top 3 worthy. We've seen some very good runs from this horse, like I mentioned, in the form of its life, and it should be, if not in the top 3, definitely in the top 6. It's no question about that. Number 4 is Our Ivanhoe. This horse is resuming in the Ranvert Stakes. This is its first run of this prep. It's actually its first run since the Melbourne Cup last year, where it came 17th out of the 24 horse field. Of course, it's a Lee and Anthony Friedman trained horse. Kieran McAvoy is on board as the jockey, and it's coming out of Barrier 5. It comes back with new colours. It's fair to note that as well. It hasn't won since the Group 1 Dubberton Cup last May. However, the distance does suit, but I would be surprised if it won or placed, considering this is a resuming run for this horse. Number 5 is United States. It is a Robert Hickmott trained horse. It's coming out of Barrier 3. Ben Melman keeps the ride from its 5th place in the Australian Cup last weekend over the 2,000 metres. Finished 3rd first up over the 1,800 metre distance at Caulfield. It's fair to mention that. It has good form, good Sydney form in fact, finishing 1st and 2nd in its only 2 starts in Sydney, so that is a pretty good kind of statistic to respect. It's fair to say that, and it actually includes last year's Ranvert Stakes, so it's coming into this race hoping to go back to back. I think this horse is in this. It couldn't quite finish in the top 3 last week in the Australian Cup, but well, this is a different race, and it's a race that it won last year, and considering the statistic that it has good Sydney form, I think it's definitely in this. Number 6 is He's Our Rocky, and this horse is a David B. Hayes and T. Dabernig trained horse. It's coming out of Barrier 2. Dwayne Dunn takes the ride. It hasn't had the greatest prep after 3 straight wins last prep, so it's a little bit disappointing from this horse's point of view. In fact, one of those wins out of those 3 straight wins was at Group 1 level, the Toorak Handicap at Caulfield. So that was it was in pretty solid form coming into this prep off its last prep. It's fair to say that. Only won once over the 2,000 metre distance from 1 attempt, so it's basically undefeated over this 2,000 metre distance. It might be worth considering, I think. I actually did tip this horse as my roughie of the race in the Orr Stakes, and the CF Orr Stakes, and even though it did disappoint in that race, and it also disappointed in the Group 1 Futurity, I think you can't go away from this horse. It did come 4th last start in the Ajax at Rosehill over the 1,500 metre distance, and in fact that was on the weekend, so can't rule out. Number 7 is Antonio Kersepi, and this horse is a Chris Waller trained horse. Ty Ungland keeps the ride from its 2nd place on the weekend at Rosehill Gardens in the 2,000 metre Sky High. It's coming out of Barrier 8 in this race. This is in fact its 2nd crack at a Group 1 after coming 2nd in the Metropolitan last year. In fact, that was on AFL Grand Final Day, and I'll remind you of who won, because it was my team, the Western Bulldogs. Just thought I would add that in there. But anyway, back to the horse racing. It has won over the 2,000 metre distance at Rosehill before, and it's yet to finish outside the top 6. So, look, it's 4 years old. It's going pretty well, and I think it's right in this. Finally, number 8, we have Sophia Rose. This is a Stephen Marsh trained horse. It's coming out of barrier 7, and Blake Shin takes the ride. This is a New Zealand horse who came 7th, first up in the Group 1 NRM Sprint at Tirapa. That's of course in New Zealand, and it came 3rd last start over the 1600 metre distance. It does step up to the 2000 metres, where it seems to have no trouble whatsoever. It is a first timer though at Rosehill, and that is questionable considering it's coming from another country. So look, you can't rule out, however, the odds do suggest that you can't rule this horse out. Okay, time now for my tips for the Group 1 Ranvert Stakes over the 2000 metre distance at Rosehill Gardens this Saturday to start off Group 1 racing on Golden Slipper Day. And I tip Hartnell to win this race. It wasn't an easy decision. I know it's a clear favourite, but well, it came 3rd last start, and that was a bit off-putting. So it's fair to say that it does need to earn back a little bit of respect after that last run. Of course, I in fact made the big call a couple of weeks ago on the big Group 1 racing show that this is the second best horse in Australia right now behind Winks, and kind of questioned what I said that day. In fact, I'm kind of taking it back slowly. So, but look, I'm going to stick with it. It does well at this distance, and look, we'll forgive its last run. It's coming out of a much better barrier in this race, and it should be hard to beat. So that's why I'm tipping it as first. Of course, has won 2 Group 1s over this distance, as I mentioned in the in-depth field preview. I'm going to go in Tonio Casepi as second. A big call considering it's probably one of the youngest horses in this race, but I think this horse is in some great form. It hasn't yet finished outside the top 6, which is very, very promising. And it wasn't a bad run last week. Of course, only come second, but it wasn't a bad run, and I think it's set up nicely for this. And in fact, I reckon it might just give Hartnell a bit of a show. I don't think it'll be far away from Hartnell. I do like its form at this present time. Of course, it's already had a crack at a Group 1. It came second that day, and that was in the Metropolitan, as I mentioned. So I think it's going to come second again, or at least be in the top 3 in this Group 1. I've decided to go third, the United States. I think this horse, it came 5th in the Australian Cup last week, which probably wasn't its best, to be honest, but it doesn't have the best Flemington form, so it comes to Sydney with some sort of better form than what it did at Flemington, which is very, very, I guess, turning on sort of thing. It's better that it kind of turns me on a little bit more than you know, reviewing its Flemington form when it's running at Flemington, and that's exactly how I felt last week when doing the Australian Cup form. So look, back at Sydney, of course, it's won this race before, so it's ran over the 2,000 metre distance, and I think it's going to come third. I think it should be up there and be very competitive this time round, as opposed to last week. It was competitive last week, but of course not competitive enough to finish in the top 3. So that is my tips for the Group 1 Ranvert Stakes. And just a quick roughie of the race, I give it to He's Our Rocky. Disappointed me in the All Stakes, where I tipped it as the roughie of the race that day, although I'm open to giving it another chance, and wasn't a bad run last start, and look, it's undefeated over the 2,000 metre distance. It's only had one crack at it, so of course it's a bit silly in a way to say that, but it might be suited to this distance a bit more than the previous distances. Who knows? But yeah, look, I think it's ready, and I think it could crack the top 3, sorry. And it could be an each-way chance, and who knows, maybe a roughie that might get up. I do doubt it, but I think if you want a roughie in this race, this might be the horse to go. Of course, it is backed by the punters at $16. So if you put an each-way bet, you at least get around that money back. Okay, time now for the second Group 1 on a massive Golden Slipper Day this Saturday. This is race 5 on the program. It is the China Horse Club George Ryder over 1,500 metres. The race will start at 2:45 p.m. Of course, once again, all the action from Golden Slipper Day on 7 and Sky Racing 1. Let's have a look at the field and the odds. We start with the best mare in the world at the moment. In fact, probably the best horse at the moment in the world, and that is Winx, going for 16 straight in the George Ryder. Also going for back-to-back George Ryder crowns in this race. It's backed by the punters at the moment at $1.24. It could be lower than that, to be honest. The next best is Chautauqua, backed by the punters at $10. Of course, everyone is getting around the Winx v Chautauqua showdown. It's never been seen before, so it should be very, very interesting. Lee Romain is backed by the punters at $13. Haraki is the next best at $34. At $41 we have Tosum Stardom. Endless Drama is backed by the punters at $67. At $71 we have McQueary. Labaz is at $601. That is absolutely big odds. And at $601 also we have Sal Peed. So that is the field. Now let's get into the field in depth, if it's even worth it. But no, we will get into the field in depth. Number 1, we have Chautauqua. And this horse is a Michael Wayne and John Hawkes trained horse. It is going to be jockeyed by Tommy Berry. And it's coming out of barrier 1, which is a little bit of a concern for me, because if you go back to the Manicato, it was favourite to win that day, and instead it came 7th out of the 10-horse field. So I'm a little bit concerned about barrier 1. I don't think it does too well from this barrier, so I'm a little bit concerned about that. But look, it's had a promising 2 races this prep so far. I think the 2 races it's ran in this prep are pretty solid efforts. In third in its first start, and then last start in the Canterbury Stakes, it came second out of the 8-horse field, only just beaten by Lee Romain in what was a classic showdown down the straight. It was absolutely fantastic. It's definitely capable of much better, as we know. However, like I said, I'm a little bit concerned about barrier 1. Number 2 is Lee Romain, a Chris Lee's trained horse. Glenn Schofield keeps the ride. It's coming out of barrier 7, and I thought this horse would be an absolute danger to Chautauqua last start, and it proved to be that way in the Canterbury Stakes. It was a classic showdown, as I mentioned, down the straight, but Lee Romain was able to hold Chautauqua off and win only just at Royal Randwick that day in the Canterbury Stakes Group 1 level. It's undefeated this prep. It's had 2 starts. One of those 3 starts, it's in fact a trial. So its last 2 starts, its first 2 starts of this prep, it's undefeated and won both of those over 1,200, 1,300 metre distance. It's a 3-time Group 1 winner. We cannot forget that. Should at least place, I reckon. It's definitely top 3 worthy. Number 3 is Haraki. Of course, this horse is a John O'Shea trained horse. William Book takes the ride. It's coming out of barrier 2. 4th and 3rd in its only starts this prep. Has the ability to win over this distance, but has been beaten by a couple of horses in this race in its previous runs, including Winx, that has beaten this horse on many occasions. So, yeah, I'm not too sure I can see this horse being in the top 3. Number 4, Tosum Stardom, a Darren Weir trained horse. Craig Williams keeps the ride. It's coming out of barrier 9, more suited to the 1,800 metre plus distances, but managed to finish 2nd in the Group 1 Futurity last start at Caulfield. So, look, it's hard to see it winning this, however, considering the form that other horses take into this race. But who knows, maybe a placing chance. Number 5 is Labaz, and this horse is a Michael Wayne and John Hawkes trained horse, coming out of barrier 3, and it's come 7th in its last 2 races over similar distance at Royal Randwick. Last one over this distance in May 2014 though, so that's a bit off-putting, and I'm prepared to pass on this horse. Number 6 is McQueary, and this horse is a Chris Waller trained horse. Coming at barrier 6, Kieran McAvoy takes the ride from Huey Bowman, who rode this horse to a first place in the Liverpool over 1,300 metres last start at Royal Randwick. That was a resuming race that day, so good effort there by McQueary. Much stronger field, however, in this race, as we know. But came second in the Group 1 Cantella, so that was, of course, last prep. So, yeah, interesting. Number 7, Endless Drama. This horse is another Chris Waller trained horse coming out of barrier 4, and Ty Ungland keeps the ride from its previous start. It came 6 in the Chipping Norton in its last start. That was at Group 1 level. It was a poor run in my opinion, because I think a lot of people expected it to be up in the top 3-4 category, and it was outside of that. So look, because of that, I am maybe there were some circumstances, but I'm going to pass. Number 8 is the Mighty Mare. She's the queen of the world right now. It's fair to say that, and that is Winx, a Chris Waller trained horse. Huey Bowman, of course, on board once again, and it's coming out of barrier 8, which is a little bit of an awkward barrier, I must say that, but I tell you what, this horse is going for its 16th straight win this Saturday. It is unbelievable. It is just absolutely fantastic. I am just lucky. I'm lucky. I think everyone should be lucky about what we're seeing in this mare right now. She is just producing some of the best form you'll ever see, some of the best runs you'll ever see, some breathtaking runs, and I'm sure this Saturday's is going to be no excuse. It actually went back-to-back in its last start. That was in the Chipping Norton. It won, so it's won back-to-back Chipping Norton, and it's coming into this race looking for a back-to-back George Ryder. So it won this race last year, and it's looking to go back-to-back this year. So look, like I said, draws an awkward barrier, but look, I don't think it should be a problem. It has won from awkward barriers before, it's fair to say that, and look, I can't go past it, obviously. I don't think anyone can right now. It is the best horse in the country at the moment. There's no question about that, and definitely in the world. And finally, we have number 9, Serpede, and this horse is the only 3-year-old in the race, which is very, very interesting to say the least. It's coming out of barrier 5, and it came 4th last start, but hasn't won past the 1,200 metre distance. It's still developing, this horse, I reckon, and so because of that, I think this race will be too tough. Okay, time now for my tips for the Group 1 George Ryder. And well, do I even have to tell you who I think will win this race? I think everyone knows who I'm going to tip, and that is Winx. I'm going to say her name because we treat her like a queen on this show, because that's exactly what she is. She is a champion, a legend, a scrum-diddlyumptious horse. Her runs are breathtaking. Her performances are just absolutely amazing. And, well, we are seeing one of the best horses probably since Black Caviar, and it's hard to compare her to Black Caviar because Black Caviar was an absolute legend in itself as well. But gee, Winx is just, she's the mighty mare. She's the best in the country, best in the world right now, and she's going for 16 straight this Saturday, and I think she'll definitely do it in the George Ryder this Saturday. Also will claim back-to-back George Ryders if she wins this Saturday. Over half her 15 wins so far have been at Group 1 level, so that is just fantastic. Of course, back-to-back Cox Plates and back-to-back Chipping Nortons as well. She is just, she's a mighty mare. She's a champion, legend. I think I've said enough. So Winx is first for me. I've gone secondly, Remain. Everyone might be a bit surprised about that because it is being made out to be the Winx and Jataka showdown this week, but I think Lee Remain will get in the way. This horse is undefeated this prep so far. It just held out Chautauqua, who came home very strong. Like I mentioned before, I'm a bit concerned about barrier 1 for Chautauqua. I don't think barrier 1 is a very good barrier for that horse Chautauqua to be running from, and I think it's going to get a little bit stuck, to be honest. So because of that, I'm tipping Lee Remain in the middle as second, but I think Chautauqua will come home strongly, maybe a little bit late though to claim second, and we'll get third. For me, who knows, it might even be a battle between Lee Remain and Chautauqua again, because I think Winks will be a couple of horse lengths in front, maybe more than a couple of horse lengths in front of Chautauqua and Lee Remain. So Lee Remain second and Chautauqua is third. I'm not going to do a roughie of the race because I just don't think there's any other horse who you can really back. So I'm going to stay away from the roughie of the race for this race and move on to the next Group 1. Okay, let's get on now to the third Group 1 of the day at Rosehill Gardens this Saturday. It is the Group 1 Sky Racing Rosehill Guineas over the 2,000 metre distance. Of course, the race for 3-year-olds, and this race will be ran at 3:25 p.m. So let's have a look now at the field and the odds. We start with Inference, who is backed by the punters at $3.60. Of course, coming off a Ranvert Guineas win at Group 1 level, so that's why it's such a strong favourite. Prized Icon is the next best at $7, as well as Ginger Nuts, the New Zealand horse there. Coming through is backed by the punters at $9. Impervito is backed by the punters at $9.50. Anihem is backed by the punters at $14. Seaburge backed by the punters at $16. At $18 we have Sizzling Bullet. At $18 we also have Harper's Choice. Sosibon is way out at $41, Land of Plenty at $51, and at $71 we have Hollywood Mo. Number 1 we have Prized Icon, a James Cummings trained horse. Glenn Schofield takes the ride, and it's coming out of barrier 8. This horse, of course, is a Victoria Derby winner. Second in the Australian Guineas last race. That was a couple of weeks ago. Now, of course, it had that option of either running in the Ranvert Guineas, or the Australian Guineas. Took the option to run in the Australian Guineas. I'm actually interested in this horse because that was over 1,600 metres at Australian Guineas. Steps up to the 2,000 metres. It won the Victorian Derby over 2,000 plus distance. I think it might just be peaking in time for this Rosehill Guineas. So look, I think it might just be set up for this, and I think it will finish in the top 3 again in this race, and who knows, maybe even a first place. Number 2, Ginger Nuts. This horse is coming out of barrier 4. Opie Bosson is the jockey, and interesting horse this one, because it's a New Zealand chestnut who comes to Sydney having won its last 3 races. There is a bit of downside to this horse though. It has no form history on a heavy track, and we are dealing with a heavy 9 track this Saturday, or that's what it is at the moment anyway. We are dealing with a heavy 9 track for Rosehill Gardens this week. Plus, not sure what to expect being its first time in Australia on Saturday. It is going to be its first run in Australia on Saturday at Rosehill Gardens, so a little bit of downside, but I tell you what, it's won its last 3, and 2 of those have been at 2,000 plus distance. So in saying that, I reckon if you go by form in New Zealand, I think this horse is right in this. Number 3 is Seaburge. This horse is a David B. Hayes and T. Dabenig trained horse. It's coming out of barrier 10, and Blake Shin takes the ride. It came second in the McKinnon last prep over the 2,000 metre distance at Flemington. Hasn't won past the 1,400 metre distance, however, and it has finished outside the top 5 in all of its starts this prep. So taking that into account, I'm not really sure if I can see it up there in the top 3, but it's kind of one of those horses who you can't rule out, because like I mentioned, second in the McKinnon over 2,000 metres, so it might place. Number 4 is Inference, and this horse is a Michael Wayne and John Hawkes trained horse. It's coming out of barrier 3. Tommy Berry retains the ride. It stepped up to the 1,600 metre distance nicely to win the Group 1 Ranvert Guineas last start. Came 5th in the lead-up race, so as I mentioned, a good step up to the 1600 metre distance. That was from 1400 metres, and it stepped up very nicely to the plate. Came 3rd in the only attempt at 2000 metres at Caulfield last prep. Should have no problem with the heavy 9 Rosehill, and probably won't have any trouble with the distance either. If it comes late like it did before with genuine speed, then it should be right up there once again in the Rosehill Guineas. Number 5 is coming through. This horse is a Chris Waller trained horse, and Craig Williams is on board as the jockey from Marira, who rode in its last start. It's coming out of barrier 6. It finished in the top 3 as expected last start in the Group 1 Ranvert Guineas. First crack at 2000 metres, has finished inside the top 6 all of its 3 starts this prep. Showed some strong speed down the straight before being caught. It might be suited to the 2000 metres, and because of that, I think it's top 3 worthy, this horse. Number 6 is Anium, and this horse has Huey Bowman on board as the jockey for this race. It's coming out of barrier 12, which is a somewhat awkward barrier from my point of view at least. Alongside prized icon Ginger Nuts and Sizzling Bullet, this horse has also won at 2000 metres plus. So there's only 4 horses in this race that have won over that distance, and this is one of them. 5th last start in the Group 1 Australian Guineas. Came home very strong in the last 400 metres. If you go back to the replay, you can actually see it flashing through to come 5th place in that race. I think it's each way claims because I can't really rule it out. Can't really rule it out, full stop. But like I said, has drawn the outside barrier of barrier 12, so that puts me off a little bit. But geez, it was a pretty good flash home in the last 400 metres last start. It has to do that from a little bit further back, though, I reckon, to win the race. Number 7, we have Soci Bon, and this horse is a Robbie Lang trained horse. It's coming out of barrier 9, and Kieran McAvoy comes on for this race. 10th last start in the Australian Guineas at Group 1 level, as we know. Hasn't won past the 1200 metre distance. Last win came in September last year. I don't think it's in form to win this, and because of that opinion, I think I'm going to pass on Soci Bon. It did look promising though last prep, but doesn't really look that promising at the moment. Number 8 is Sizzling Bullet, and this horse is a Chris Waller trained horse. Ryan Moore takes the ride, and it's coming out of barrier 5. And this horse is at $13 plus odds, as you saw before. And it's won its last 3 races, which is quite impressive. Its last being over the 2000 metre distance at Royal Randwick. Hasn't raced for a month, but the freshen up might be good, especially coming into this big Group 1 race, the Rosehill Guineas. So, look, it seems to love the longer distances, so this might suit it quite nicely, and because of that, I think this horse is in with a shot. It is a first timer running at Rosehill. Number 9 is Impervito, and this horse is a B. John Baker trained horse. Jeff Lloyd is on board, actually comes on from Ty Ungland, who rode this horse in its last race. It's coming out of barrier 7. 4th in the Ranvert Guineas last start. Stuck at the back before turning it on down the straight in what was a strong finish by the horse. It's no question about that. Came 3rd over 1800 metre distance 2 starts back. Won at Kembla Grange late January, which was its only win. So, look, it could be set up for this distance. Who knows? Number 10 is Land of Plenty. Has 1 win to its name so far. It came 8th last start in the Australian Guineas. 3rd in 2 of its starts this prep. However, this race will probably prove too tough in my opinion. Of course, it's a Graham Begg trained horse. Stephen Arnold is on board, stays on from its last run, which was, of course, as I mentioned, in the Australian Guineas. It's coming out of barrier 2. Number 11, Harper's Choice. This is a Jared Ryan trained horse. Adela comes on board and it's coming out of barrier 11. It was my roughie of the race in the Ranvert Guineas, and it didn't do too badly in my opinion. It came sixth in that race, but was a length and a half behind fifth placed Man from Uncle. Has won at 900 metres B4, which is impressive considering this is at 2,000 metres. Yet to finish outside the top six. Should be right in this, I reckon, and could be at the top again. Finally rounding out the field, we have number 12, Hollywood Mo. It's a Paul Berry trained horse. Ben Melman is on and it's coming out of barrier 1, the inside barrier there. Has not won a race from its 10 attempts. Fifth last start at Warwick Farm over 1,600 metres. This, of course, much tougher. We do know that. It did come sixth in the Victoria Derby at Group 1 level last prep, but I think I'm going to pass on this horse. Okay, time now for my tips for the Group 1 Sky Racing Rosehill Guineas over the 2,000 metre distance. Of course, race 6 on the program. And I must say this was actually quite a tough race to pick, for me to pick my tips, in fact, because there is a lot of good form from several horses in this race. At least half of the field has some real genuine threat to this race. So it was quite difficult, and I'm not even sure if I'm that confident with my tips, but I'll share them anyway. I've gone number 1 Prized Icon to win the race. Of course, won the Victorian Derby over 2,500 metre distance at Flemington last year. I think at the 2,000 metres and going by its or its previous runs this prep, including the Australian Guineas last start, I think it's set up and ready to win a race like this. So I'm going to go Prized Icon as my first placed horse. I'm going to go Inference as second. I did love its run. In fact, I really did make a fool out of myself in the Ranvert Guineas preview and said that it was probably more of a placing chance. Look, it's definitely up there as a winning chance in this race, but I think it will come second. Yeah, loved its race, loved its run last start, and should have no problem over this longer distance. It was really hard to pick a third placed horse. I think, I feel terrible about leaving out Ginger Nuts and Coming Through in my top 3, because I think these two horses are really top 3 worthy. But I've decided to go Impervito. Fourth in the Ranvert Guineas, like I said, came home very strongly, and maybe if it got going a bit later, it might have, in fact, been able to, be a bit, further in the placings. In fact, it might have even catched Inference. Who knows? But yeah, look, I really did like its run, and I think it's set up for this race, and I think it's going to place and come third. So yeah, Impervito third for me. So just repeating my tips: Prized Icon first, Inference second, and third is Impervito for me. And my roughie of the race goes to Sizzling Bullet. Really like the form of this horse. It is backed by the punters at around $18. So considering it's won its last 3 races and one of them's been over the 2,000 metre distance in Sydney, I don't think you can rule this horse out. It looks like a pretty good informed horse, and I think it may be a really kind of smart move to put an each way bet on this horse, because it looks to be in very, very good form coming into this race, and it looks suited to this sort of distance. So even though the risk is that it's a first timer at Rosehill and a heavy 9 track, etc., I think this horse is going to be right up there, and it's definitely one of those roughies of the race. It's my roughie of the Rosehill Guineas. And that is it for part 1 of episode 21 of the Big Group 1 Racing Show. Thank you very much for watching. Of course, don't forget to like, comment and share this video. Subscribe, because part 2 of episode 21 of this show is going to be absolutely massive. I'll be previewing the Group 1 Golden Slipper, That is going to be massive in itself. It is a really good field this year, and in fact I think it's going to be one of the best of the Golden Slippers we see this year. So stay tuned for a preview of that, and of course we've got the Galaxy as well coming up in that episode as well. A good field in that race as well. So 2 more Group 1s to preview, and what is a massive day on Saturday at Rosehill Gardens. It clearly is the biggest day in terms of the racing program in Australia. It's, you know, no other place in Australia features 5 Group 1s. So until part 2 of episode 21, I'm Jacob. Bye for now.